Welcome to the Courageously Candid Coaching Podcast. I'm Matthew Radley, CEO of MRA Executive Coaching, and this is the podcast where we say it as it is, where we are courageous and candid combined. In this episode, we will be pulling out all the stops to see what happens when a leader who is also a coach faces into their own reality head on, and the journey towards achieving the ultimate goal of self-acceptance. My guest today is Sarah Bailey, AVP of Talent and Development at Pacific Life, who has trusted MRA with professional coaching needs across multiple organisations and has said yes to bringing her truth to our conversation. Sarah is also a qualified team coach and a brave human being, and you'll see that in action shortly. We know how important this area of discussion is for all of us as leaders and coaches, because bringing neurodiversity into coaching is a fundamental requirement if to engage fully with the workforce of today.
So welcome, Sarah. It's so lovely to have you in the space with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So where do we start? Well, let's start with the beginning, shall we? And let's think about winding back to your first interaction with us at MRA. Can you remember what it was, where we were, what we were doing, and more importantly, why you're still in our world today?
Yes, I think it was quite a unique interaction because we kind of met at school. So yeah, we were doing our team coaching, and I think, you know, for me, just the way in which you both came across, and obviously you go quite deep as coaches. You put a lot of coaches and people in a room. We were going deep, and I think just that way in which you had that care, and yeah, we just continued the conversation from there, really. On top of the coaching qualification, I was doing a lot at work and working in a million different ways. So yeah, the support I think that I had through the coaching was just invaluable. So and continues to be today.
So you're not only a client of MRA through the employee client lens, but you're also a qualified coach.
Yeah.
And we did our qualification in team coaching at Henley. So a really sort of interesting conversation today, because you kind of could be in this chair,
Absolutely,
but you're in that one. So let's see where this one goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah, a really important topic that we want to cover today that's often just so neglected is neurodiversity, and particularly in the workplace and in coaching. Tell us your story.
Well, my story, I think, is a one that I didn't know about for a very long time. So I was, 40 by the time I got a diagnosis. And I lived with an anxiety diagnosis in the workplace for so many years. And I was really good at my job, but I didn't present as anxious either. So people were like, not sure I get this. And I didn't get it myself. So I think as you step into leadership, you get that kind of, imposter syndrome that I think most of us get, and women, nearly all of us in some way. But I knew there was something missing in the way that I sort of had got feedback, and I cared so much. And I could see other people going, oh, well, the amount of times coaches, therapists have told me, it's on the table, you can choose whether you take it off. And I was like, but it's not on the table. Yeah. It's like literally crippling me the minute it comes out of somebody's mouth. So it was, I couldn't understand where that went. And ultimately, I think as I stepped sort of further up and kind of working with some quite direct, people, and nobody always has that model, that kind of perfect way to give feedback. So, I think it was crippling me, but I couldn't understand why, yet also highly capable, getting lots of good feedback, lots of potential, succession plans and, other job opportunities and things. And so it just didn't all make sense. And then I have a backdrop of an L&D background, lots of behavioural psychology, qualified coach, seen as incredibly self-aware. So I was quite frustrated.
It's a great dichotomy, isn't it?
I love
it's
it.
A really great dichotomy.
I love it. So what was the moment for you where the real shift happened?
For me, it was a moment of burnout, and it just all got too much. And I think it was that moment where I had to stop, but actually stopping, I just remember felt terrible. Because the care that I had for my team, and actually also the motivation I have to keep going, keep delivering things. It was so hard, because doing nothing with an ADHD mind, that's not easy. So that's very rare. So actually that stopping moment, I started to reflect and think, there's something not quite right here. And, you know, anybody that's in the corporate world that has private healthcare and things, if they are thinking that, you know, use the tools. That would be my first kind of piece of advice.
There's so many lenses we could talk this through. We could talk it through your human experience. We could talk it through your experiences as a coach. We could talk it through your experience as a coachee. We could talk it through your experience as a leader. Like, there's so many ways in this one could go. So we'll probably bring you back and we'll work through the next of those 4 if we can do. The thing that's sort of sitting with me the most is the point at which you had to face into this, and the conversation that you had with somebody that was courageous enough to check in with you in a slightly uncomfortable way. So can we just take a moment just to talk through what it felt like as a client when somebody is courageous enough to say, hey?
And I think for me, that was really powerful, because it wasn't, you know, hey, I think you have this. And that, I think, is so important in the world of coaching and diagnosis of neurodivergence, because neurodivergence is a tiny section of me. And I think in order to actually get an accurate diagnosis, it's almost going in with, these are my symptoms, to the doctor. So I think it was that, you know, I actually think you need to stop. And that was Sophie. And and it was, you know, let's stop. Let's just put the brakes on. And that for me felt so uncomfortable in one sense that we've just talked about. But actually, I was like, oh my God, yes, please. Somebody's just given me permission. And that was really, you know, quite key in my journey to then, you know, sort of building back up, I guess.
And what is it? You're a self-aware coach who wasn't aware of neurodivergence, as is often the case with leaders and coaches. But somebody said to you, in a moment, let's stop, and it gave you a sense of permission. If we were to go a bit deeper for a minute, had that intervention not happened and that let's stop, just without being, I guess, sort of overly dramatic around it, but with a sense of honesty and truth for yourself, knowing yourself really well, where would that have gone?
I can't even think about that, because I think I knew that I was, you know, physically I was ill most weeks, you know, and I'd go to the doctors. I had ear infections, chest infections, like my whole body was shutting down. So it was trying to give me lessons, and I'm like, okay, more drugs, we'll keep going. And so actually I don't know, but I don't think it would have been a very good place.
Really pretty sight. What was your reflection, Sophie? Because obviously you had the let's just pause moment as a coach, and I guess ultimately, what was sitting inside of you that gave you the bravery to say, I think there's something here, and I know this is not going to be an easy conversation to have, but I know I care enough about the person in front of me to step in with that. What was in your mind as a coach?
It's exactly that word, care. And the pain I could see that Sarah was in, and her desire to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep being what the world wanted from her. And that inability to give herself permission, because she just wants to continue to be the brilliant version of her that she is today and always has been. And it was absolutely my role, out of care, but also because I know how brilliant she is. She needed to stop.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, take a minute.
Get emotional.
Yeah, just take a second and sit with it. That's the purpose of the conversation. We want these podcasts to be sort of quite felt in their experience for people listening and watching, and so they'll feel this, which is good. And then maybe it gives somebody else permission to think about where they want to go with their awareness.
Yeah.
In your, if you were being courageously candid for a minute, talking to organisations about how they either support or invariably don't champion, or almost always don't, people with neurodivergence, what would you be saying to an organisational leader, an executive team, whoever may be responsible for people in an organisation, in the context of enabling brilliant conversations that mean someone like you doesn't end up where you're too scared to tell me where you might have ended up? Let's get right into it. Go on, call it out.
Do you know, I think it is actually holding managers to account, it's holding leaders to account. There are too many times in organisations where we have one size fits all for feedback. Like, can you imagine being a child and getting feedback once a year on your performance as a child? You know, all through school, you're getting feedback on your behaviour, on, you know, your academics, etc. And then we go into the corporate world and we do it once a year.
Yeah.
And, you know, for somebody in that sort of neurodivergent group of people, either if you're ADHD, you don't remember.
Yeah.
You know, that's the truth. So somebody says, oh, you know, that project we did back in April, unless it was amazing or terrible, I can tell you, I don't remember the details.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have an objective conversation.
Yeah.
So we have to really embrace feedback, care, humanity. You know, there isn't, you know, sort of one size fits all.
Yeah.
And also we don't know who has, you know, neurodivergence. We don't know what's going on in people's lives because it's not just about neurodivergence.
No.
There's a lot of reasons why people show up the way they do at work.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as businesses, it's not necessarily our responsibility to solve all those problems, but we have to create cultures where people think that they can absolutely come into work and, you know, receive feedback, drive their own performance, and have a manager that is really able to listen and support them, you know, within the business.
So I have a fundamental belief. So 3 years ago, all of the MRA coaches were trained and qualified to become awareness of neurodiversity and to be able to assess and support our clients to go forward for assessment. Okay, so that felt really important to us, to be on the front edge of that. It's always been important to be on the front edge, but it's very out there now, isn't it? We took people, everyone's talking about neurodiversity, everyone's talking about neurodiversity. But what I still observe with our clients is that we're talking about it, but actually the discipline and functions of our people leaders, nothing's happening. So I want you to poke a bit with me on this one. Let's poke a few organisations a little bit through the lens of, why is it just unacceptable, fundamentally unacceptable, for anybody who has manager in the title or leader in the title not to know about neurodivergence? Poke really hard with me.
Do you know, I think when I look at it from a global lens, we're probably not all starting from the same starting line. So I think that, you know, for me, we have to talk to people about what it is and what it means, and also how we will deal with it as a company, because sometimes you have to give the manager permission to do that. And I think often we have employer groups, which is great, you know, so people can meet other people like them. And we have leaders that go, yeah, you know, we've got all these things and we're going to give you private healthcare. But that bit in the middle, what we don't do is give managers permission to do things a little bit differently, to support people as individuals. And that is, you know, really critical, I think, as we see, you know, increasing diagnosis. I think we've seen, you know, people having, you know, going through the working world throughout generations and just never knowing. But now people are finding out, there's so much in the media that's all over Instagram, all over TikTok, it's in schools. So people have a diagnosis, but they don't have an ecosystem of care.
Yeah,
The NHS in the UK is not working. There are many countries where it's even worse than that. So people are looking to employers. And even if you're sitting as an employer going, you know what, diversity, inclusion, it's all a bit woolly. If you want this 5-10% people to perform and actually affect your bottom line, you have to do something differently.
That ecosystem of care, I love that. And there's something around human leadership. Yeah, and treating you all as individuals. Because, one of the things that we took from our neurodiversity training is if you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person, or you've met one person with autism, you've met one person. So it's not enough to say, well, these are the traits of, I've watched something on TikTok or Instagram and I know what ADHD. No. So it's about how, to your point, it shouldn't be that single once a year rear view mirror look in terms of performance, but it should be more around, really, when you think about the world of coaching, it's tapping into those strengths and where you thrive and how you like to receive feedback, whether you're neurodivergent or not.
Absolutely.
In all honesty.
Yeah.
It's that, leading with real compassion and understanding. That starts from the education that you talk about. So making sure that everybody through that chain, managers, leaders, whoever, is empowered to feel comfortable to have the conversations that says, well, we normally do reviews once a year, but how would you like to have your reviews done, Sarah? What's important to you? Do you like feedback in the moment? Do you want it every quarter? How is that going to work for you? Because it's that whole vested in success at an individual level. That's what I'm hearing. That I think that's the gap.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I had a recent conversation with an organisation who want to hone in big on performance and productivity of their people. And they have so far to date talked sort of psychologically about what it means to be able to do performance and productivity really well, but no reference at all to the 15% of people who may be neurodivergent and what does performance and productivity look like through their lens. That's a different experience. But if managers haven't got permission to have the dialogue, then they will never know. For me, there's a bravery in a coach feeling confident enough to ask the question, but I think that's very different to a manager engaging in a dialogue with a member of their team around something that they don't really know about and are scared that they might say the wrong thing. So let's talk about it from a leader's perspective. You're a leader and you have no training, but you're sensing something and you don't know where to go in the conversation, because you're scared you'll say the wrong thing. And that might have an employment law issue and challenge and so on and so forth. People don't say it because they're scared. So talk about it. What would be your guidance and advice to managers, or what do you think organisations should be doing with leaders and managers to take that pressure away that enables and frees them up to have the dialogue?
I think, as a manager in these situations, it's quite a tough job because we have a backdrop of Equality Acts which don't encourage, necessarily people to talk about, illnesses, long-term health conditions, but it's creating that psychological safety as a team, and that is a manager's job. So you've got the culture that the leaders are going to create, but as a manager, how are you making sure people feel comfortable to say how they feel? And, that for me is really something that every manager needs to explore that is specific to their team, because it looks different for everybody. I think the other thing is that, we can assume, we can make a lot of assumptions like, is that person, on the spectrum somewhere? I've had all sorts of really,
that's uncomfortable.
And so, somebody with no training or support, my advice is, get that person. So why are you noticing this? Is this a performance piece? Because your job is actually to manage that person's performance and well-being. So if they aren't performing, it's actually not waiting to an appraisal, but noticing that you've seen a change in that person, or you've given them extra responsibility and it's not quite adding up, and it's having that conversation that, you know, it's real simple, you know, this is what I've noticed, this is the impact it's having, and then empowering them as to what they'd like to do. But making sure they know that there are tools available, that you are there as a manager to support them. And I think that little and often in terms of feedback will support the person to build a picture of themselves and what is going on, and seek the appropriate help. And that for me is quite critical.
What's the minimum standard then? What would you say sitting here today with lived experience of neurodiversity, but also knowledge of being a leader and a coach and all of those hats? Let's just go through that lens. What do you say is the absolute minimum standard for every single organisation to have in place to enable a conversation that might just unlock the conversation that you guys have? What's the minimum standard, Sarah?
Every new manager needs to have management development training
On
actually how to have real conversations with their people.
About?
About them as an employee, about their performance, about why they show up the way they do. Because actually, if you are a manager and you have those coaching skills, that is what is going to create those pictures. It's going to build that for the person, as opposed to you as a manager that's not likely a doctor as well. Because I think that's really key in any sort of neurodivergence diagnosis, is that, you know, we could make assumptions that once they get to see a doctor and a psychiatrist, etc., that is wrong. So I think, you know, for me, it is absolutely that coaching culture, enabling every single manager to know how to ask those open questions, to create the environment where they can listen. You know, I've seen performance appraisals being done where there's like colleagues sitting there, and you're never going to create that environment. So that for me is the minimum standard, and from there it will build.
I love that. So that whole focus on coaching leadership, being curious, asking questions, using that personalised approach, but through the commercial lens of it's about performance, and we want you to be at your best to perform in the best way that you possibly can, but that isn't about a one-size-fits-all, to use your language from earlier.
No, because there's sometimes where you might need more of your manager's time, but I believe that every employee needs that equitable support from their manager. You know, so in order to thrive, we have to create that culture, and that's for all of us.
So coaching leadership being important. Now let's talk really briefly around coaches. Is it or is it not acceptable for coaches not to understand neurodiversity in detail?
I don't think it's acceptable, but I think that is the whole thing for mental health as well, because I have very strong views on therapy versus coaching, and I have seen it done very badly. And again, we're not therapists, we're coaches, and so you have to have that appreciation to know when it's moving into therapy or diagnosing people, etc., that we call a halt, and we help them get the right support.
So coaching capability being one thing, deep awareness of mental health and certification of that being another, depth of understanding around neurodivergence being another. So actually the discipline is so much broader than I get a coaching qualification and I'm okay, thanks.
So much broader. You have to, you know, for me, also understand, if you're going to start coaching in businesses, what a business looks like. You know, there are a lot of coaches that just come out of the woodwork that have never been in a corporate world, and you know, you can have that sort of best practice neurodivergence kind of thinking, that best practice mental health, but until you understand what it's like in the corporate world and what it's like to be managed and what it's like to lead, it's incredibly difficult, I think, to be a coach in that area.
Okay. Now we're going to come towards the end of the conversation. As I said, I'd like to have had the conversation 4 times through different hats and lenses. That would have been really, really nice. As you sit here today, having had that initial conversation that's led you to your depth of understanding and has meant that you are on a different path and a different journey, what are you most grateful for
I think for me, it's kindness and acceptance of who I am through others. So, yeah.
Amazing.
And I hope for yourself.
Oh,
Kindness
yes.
to yourself from you.
I think just understanding me. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for bringing your whole self into a room, and I appreciate the depth of emotion that sort of sits behind that. We're only light touch today, so there's a real sense of gratitude from us to you for bringing that conversation to life for us. And we hope to have you back again soon.
No, I'm right back at you because MRI have been absolutely instrumental in my journey. So thank you.
If today's episode resonated with your own experiences, take it not as advice, but as a mirror. We'll be back next time with another coaching conversation that dares to go deeper. We look forward to seeing you then for some more courageously candid coaching conversations.